All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sihle Dlamini, Customer Experience Director at Hoorah Digital. I normally get asked to detail a couple of digital trends that we should look into every year around this time. And, over time, I've realized that there have been common themes, but most importantly, my understanding of what businesses need to be informed to do has also evolved. And because of that, I've started to really start calling them infinite digital opportunities. These are key strategic opportunities that the organization needs to consider in order for them to be able to, one, create new growth opportunities for the organization, but most importantly as well, in order to create, to identify and connect a bit more with their brands. So there are four key outputs that I would like to share, four nuggets that I would like to share. And from there, we'll be able to then just unpack it a bit further. The first one is around accelerated sophistication of digital channels. Now, over time, when we speak about the acceleration of digital, what we've identified over time is that, since the 1900s to, the more recent times, the gap between consumption and, really the product of innovation becoming more mainstream has really shortened, from the early 1900s, where it was 3 decades, and we're looking at a short span of about, 3 to 5 years in the day and age that we live in now. Added to that, we've known about how well documented COVID-19 has been and how it in itself has accelerated even more widespread adoption of digital tools. This lockdown has made sure that we are using digital a bit more, not just to connect with people, but also to be able to optimize the spaces that we find ourselves in at the moment. And as a result of that, there've been a lot of thought leadership that has pointed to the opportunity to really ensure that we start sophisticating our communication here. An example I would like to give is that of Tomorrowland. Now, what is Tomorrowland? It is this electronic festival that happens in Belgium. All the cool kids have Tomorrowland on their list of places and experiences to really do. Now, naturally, prior to the COVID era, Tomorrowland used to see about 500,000 people over a course of 2 weekends. And, in 2020, when all brands were pulling out of doing events, Tomorrowland saw it as an opportunity to pivot their value offering, to really be a resolve to the understanding of the sophistication of these channels. And they did the live virtual event that lasted over 2 days. And not only did this version of the event, garner 10 million attendees in 2 days, it was also an experience that it democratized, and this experience for many people who would not be able to really get there in person. Now, these guys went as far as using U4 generated technology to really be able to create a seamless in real-time experience for their virtual audiences. So every single light ray, every single, ounce of detail was happening at the same time. So that level of connecting people at an immersive online event indicated a brand or an organization that really at a time when there was an opportunity for people to just pull out, they pivoted, reacted, and now, they've been toying with the idea. Last year, Tomorrowland was eventually cancelled due to, spiking cases. And yet again, the resolve was to have another online version of it. So what we're already seeing is that, the conversation around blurring of the lines of online and offline is reality now. And the opportunity that lies in this speaks very much in the numbers that was identified with Tomorrowland. Our next point is around the online word of mouth. Now, to the point of, this word of mouth and this online and offline world really merging, as we go into a space of, influencer marketing 2.0. What we do know is that the platforms themselves will become this currency of influence from a word of mouth point of view. Now even more than before. And why is that? It's because generally this digital live together experience has allowed for real-time interaction. And that's an opportunity for us to be able to ensure that we're delivering the experience with a conversion opportunity. Now, what we're seeing, very silently, Walmart doing is identifying partnerships with all social media platforms to really be able to be at the frontier of social commerce at the moment. They started 2 years ago now by having this partnership with TikTok, as mentioned, but they also then went on and had a similar one in 2021 with Twitter. And as we know now, Instagram in itself has redesigned its UX to ensure that it is quite heavily focused on ensuring that shoppable opportunities become more feasible. So the reality here is that, the conversation we're having about the opportunity for conversion at an influencer content point of view has become that serious. With the click on a button, whatever product has been demonstrated can also be purchased. And we know that, to add value for consumers, to convert them even further online, one thing that has been identified is to be able to translate value into bundled deals, incentives on free shipment, and even consider larger portion size, larger pack sizes, or larger, bulk sizes as well. These kinds of things are the ones that start to create a lot of utility for a lot of these conversions in e-commerce, especially for brands that are not really that heavy on bricks and mortar, brands that are not heavy on, it's not a telecoms, it's not some level of, technology. If you're doing something like a fast moving good, those are the value attributes that would need to be focused on. Another one that we really wanted to look into is every brand is an entertainment brand. Now, back in the days, we would see a lot of this practice from Disney. Disney was seen as a space that just gave us this whimsical opportunity. The reality is that this is also quite relevant to each and every brand building opportunity. Now, why do we really put this out here? Well, there's some data that we've been exposed to that indicated that around 73% of, CMOs in South Africa and the world alike, although they understand the concept of consumer-centric content and brand experiences, the organizations are still extremely product-centric. And why this is very important in a world like today, where one, there's content fatigue, there's influencer fatigue that needs to be factored as well, is solely because every company needs to see itself as an entertainment company now. More than anything, people want to be entertained, and brand conversions typically aren't answering those questions, that need for entertainment. This means we need to start thinking more laterally about brand associations and consumer value to ensure that the entertainment element isn't forced, but it's not tone deaf and is one with the audience that we're looking to. If we look above, on this portion of the graphs, what we see is that, when we're looking at contribution to growth of organizations, segment growth brings the largest opportunities. And those are where the things like passion points lie, and football, for example, is a globally loved, passion point. So is music, so is love. Good stories about love. There are specific passion points and content interception opportunities that exist that we could really look into. KBC is a bank in Belgium, and what they opted to do is really shift their mobile banking app into a lifestyle curating opportunity. The first phase of it was adding football highlights. The next phase of it would be to add full game licensing opportunities. And they're really moving into other passion points because ultimately they're playing the long game with their audience and understanding that in order for them to really tap into their hearts and wallet, they need to tap into the things that people love, but also build that connection with them and add that value for consumers. Our next one is really around e-commerce everywhere. Now, as mentioned before, there have been these opportunities on social media that have really led to the social e-commerce. And the reality here is that, that is the opportunity that lies when we speak the total experience across the digital ecosystem. One thing that I find very interesting here as well is, yes, these digital channels have become more sophisticated. And the transaction opportunity that lies at the moment is quite tantamount to the opportunity that lies as well. So not only do we need to consume the content, but there's a product feature information opportunity here. There's shoppable opportunities that lend themselves as well in this opportunity. At a practical level, what we need to be looking at is really how do we redefine our ecosystem? So the consumer journey now has got a conversion opportunity at each and every point. So really what we need to be mindful of is how do we take each opportunity in awareness, in consumer consideration, when there's active evaluation to the conversion and the brand expectation of loyalty. At each of these points, how are we ensuring that the transaction loop is happening? And similarly so, how are we then curating the experience at each point to lead up to a transaction opportunity? So no longer do we need to look at it as a build up to a transaction moment. Every single interaction needs to be facilitated with a transaction opportunity. Similarly, so then a content opportunities need to link back to an opportunity for transaction as well. And why we really do this is that, content discovery has proven to be one of the most important places that drives consideration and conversion. So that active and passive state consumers find themselves in is the one that we need to be very much prepared for, so that when the active evaluation kicks in, we're already seeded, transaction, and we've been seeding the brand communication as well through experiences and product functions that are authentic to the passion point. At another level, we need to look at it, from an African context. This is something that is still, you would say, in its maturity stage. Although COVID-19 has accelerated e-commerce, in South Africa, about 65% of the shopping population is already using it. And about 74% of that say they will continue irrespective of it. It's indicated that there is going to be a very great deal here. There's an opportunity for us to be then mindful of when we are unpacking this total organization focus of creating this ecosystem. What variables do we need to consider in order for us to really pin ourselves further into an e-commerce transformation journey that is succinct to the consumer experience? The first one is every product has to be effectively considered to ensure that the information, prices, and inventory are all very clearly stated, not just on our own platforms, but even on third-party supplier platforms as well. And we need to be very mindful of, location considerations. Why do we need to be mindful of location considerations? Because that in itself informs, the personalization opportunity that lies in the shopper opportunities. The second point is around every channel. Are we really supporting every possible route to an e-commerce transaction? Are these including our social media channels, our brand marketing opportunities, our physical stores, our third-party agreements? How are we ensuring that each and every one of these are helping us, to identify that conversion? But what data sets are also bringing back a feedback loop for us to be gaining insights and gaining more transaction opportunities from our audience. So as mentioned here, if the business model itself is heavily dependent on whether the product is very specifically targeted to the proper channel for each shopper to be able to, enrich our behavioral data sets. And most importantly, the big thing is which aspects of our business, old business from our tier one level of strategy, do we want to defend, but which ones can we then transition into digital offerings and digital propositions? How do we integrate our old systems with our, new path? And lastly, rather, how do we keep up to date with the new developments so that in our third tier of strategy, we are not finding ourselves, not planning for the future? With this focus, not only do we get into a space where conversations about demonetizing the e-commerce platforms will be easier to have, because the total organization view has been to create value by optimizing our digital ecosystems further. Thank you.